You ready for this? We're going across the pond today.
Ooh, across the pond.
Yeah, for a deep dive into English national identity.
Sounds fascinating.
It really is. And we've got a really cool source for this one.
Okay.
So it's an article analyzing a video.
Hmm.
And get this, the video is by a Norwegian commentator.
Oh, wow. An outsider's perspective.
That's what makes it so interesting, right?
Definitely.
He's noticing things about England's social climate that people who live there might totally miss.
I can see that.
Yeah. And he uses this central metaphor.
A metaphor.
About having strong foundations.
Okay.
And it makes you think about what it means not just for a nation to have strong foundations, but
Right.
like your own beliefs too.
Oh, I see.
Like, what are you rooted in?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It is. So this Norwegian guy, he starts off by saying
Yeah.
that England just feels different to him now than it did before.
Different how?
He says it's more crowded and less friendly.
Huh.
Yeah, like from his past visits. And, obviously it's just one person's experience.
Right.
But it raises some pretty big questions.
Like what?
Like, what's actually causing these changes that he's seeing?
Yeah.
And how are the English people reacting to those changes?
I mean, how are they handling it?
Exactly. And that's where it gets really fascinating because
Yeah.
even though he sees these challenges with the way England feels different,
Mm-hmm.
he's really struck by how resilient the English people are.
Really?
Yeah, he says he got tons of messages from people basically saying
Saying what?
that they're not giving up.
Mm.
They're not going to just let these challenges defeat them.
That's pretty inspiring.
It is. And he also observed that this fighting spirit,
Yeah.
it isn't limited to just England.
No.
It extends to other parts of Britain, too.
So there's this shared resilience across the whole region.
That's what he's seeing, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where his tree metaphor comes in.
Okay. Oh, tree metaphor.
Yeah, this is the part that really blew me away.
Oh, wow.
So he compares trees that have shallow roots and how they fall over easily in storms
Okay.
to movements that are built on negativity.
Oh, I see.
He's saying that if you want to create lasting change, if you want a nation to be really strong,
Mm-hmm.
it needs to have deep roots.
Deep roots.
Yeah, and those roots have to be grounded in positive national pride,
Positive national
a
pride.
genuine love for the land, for the country itself.
Not just being against something, but being for something.
Exactly. It's about having a positive foundation to build on.
I like that.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think that metaphor is spot on.
It is, right?
It really highlights the importance of a solid foundation for anything you want to build,
Absolutely.
whether it's a nation or even just your own personal belief.
Right. If your identity is based on what you're against instead of what you're for, it becomes really fragile. It can be swayed really easily.
That's true.
And what this Norwegian guy is suggesting is that true strength
Yeah.
comes from a deep, positive connection to your heritage, to your culture,
To your home.
to your home. Yeah. And that brings us to something pretty complex.
Oh, what's up?
National pride.
Yeah.
The commentator, he comes from Norway,
Okay.
where being patriotic and showing it openly is totally normal. And he thinks the English should embrace that more.
But isn't there a fine line between healthy pride and, like harmful nationalism?
That's exactly the tricky part.
Yeah.
It's a conversation that's happening all over the world right now. How do we encourage a sense of belonging and a shared identity
Right.
without going too far and becoming, exclusionary or aggressive?
It's a tough balance.
It really is. And it requires open and honest dialogue.
And critical thinking.
Yeah. And being willing to examine our own biases.
Definitely. And I think this commentator coming in as an outsider,
Yeah.
he offers a fresh perspective on this whole discussion.
He really does. And he throws another interesting point into the mix, too.
What's that?
The UK's high population density.
Okay.
He compares it to Norway, which
Yeah.
has a lot less people. And he kind of implies that the UK's population density puts pressure on resources
I see.
and maybe even on their sense of national identity.
It's a sensitive topic for sure.
It is, but we can't just ignore it, right?
No, it's definitely something to consider.
It's a complex issue with so many different angles.
Like what?
Well, you've got population growth and immigration and how to manage resources.
Right.
And all of that is tied up with questions of national identity and how well society functions as a whole.
You have to find that balance somehow.
Yeah. And finding that balance requires thoughtful policies and probably some tough conversations.
Definitely.
Speaking of tough conversations, this is where the video gets really direct.
Oh, how so?
It challenges the idea of just blindly trusting authority. It says that really loving your nation means holding your leaders accountable
Accountable for what?
for when their actions aren't serving the people or the land.
I mean, that makes sense.
It does, right. It's a powerful message.
It is. And what's really interesting to me is how much emphasis he puts on civic engagement. Yeah, it's not enough to just say you love your country.
Right.
You have a responsibility to actually participate.
To get involved.
Yeah, to question things.
To demand better from the people in power.
Exactly. And that applies to any nation.
To any system of government.
It's about being informed and thinking critically and understanding that your choices,
They have a real impact.
it really do.
This whole deep dive has really got me thinking,
About,
about that tree metaphor
yeah.
and what my own roots are.
That's a good thing to think about.
What values do I really stand for? What gives me that sense of belonging?
What about you? What stood out to you the most from all of this?
Honestly, that tree metaphor really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I think this video, yeah, it focused on England.
Uh-huh.
But these themes of national identity and immigration and responsible leadership,
They're so relevant to other countries, too.
they really are. It's a global conversation we need to be having.
What do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
Of course, until next time.
See ya.